Hi, it's Miriam. You show me. So many times as parents, oh boy, do we want that child fixed then and there. We can't wait till this stage is over, and it's just not so easy. It's so challenging sometimes to be patient with what seems forever for the child to get to that place of being fixed. Sometimes I call this syndrome a syndrome. Fix him or her syndrome. They want the child dropped off like an article to a repair shop and get them fixed up. And they may not even realize that they themselves have a bit of a double standard because they themselves are yet to be, quote unquote, fixed. So I give you an example of one day when I was entering into my office, and in the hallway I heard a mother reprimand her child, "Hurry up, hurry up!" And it was pretty explosive. And she had actually come in to have this child assessed and treated for his explosive behaviors. So when I was in the next session, I actually pointed out to her that it was imperative that she display mood regulation, and I emphasized to her that she needed to work on responding differently to her child who was not able to maintain coherence and that was inflexible, demanding, and explosive. It's something that really needs to be addressed, because if the parents aren't role modeling this energy and behavior, then definitely it reverberates within the child's consciousness, and eventually it articulates itself in the child's behavior. If the parent is inflexible and the child is inflexible, if the parent is explosive and then it spills over to the child being explosive, then it's just a vicious cycle of negativity, one feeding into the other. And really, it is the child that's looking up to the parent for that role model. And it is the parent that has to realize he or she is the one that has to upgrade their position in increasing that ability to master their emotions more than one the child is capable at the time with such a little brain and not the experience that the adults have. And two, the parent really has to understand that even though the behaviors of the child can be so annoying and can push every button in the parent's heart, it is the parent that has to rise above first and foremost before even the child. And what can easily happen in this struggle between parent and child could really end up bringing the child to such a meltdown and to a place of not being able to think coherently. The child could be so overstressed that, like a car, getting into a state of vapor lock, as Dr. Ross Greene describes in his book, The Explosive Child. What happens to an engine in a vapor lock? It causes excessive heat. And the excessive heat causes a bubble in the gas line that prevents gas from flowing to the engine and causes the engine to stall. No matter how many times the driver pumps the gas pedal or turns on the ignition, the car won't start working again until the engine cools down. And in a similar manner, frustration often causes breakdown in any child. How much more so a child who is lagging in his capacity to think clearly because of lack of social or language skills. And what happens then? It causes the child to become so overwhelmed and less rational. Even as adults, we sometimes have the doorbell ringing, the phone is, and now we have text and WhatsApp and all these other things coming our way, and the children's on the pot, and we can get so overwhelmed that we can't even think, what was I just going to the other room for? This is so weird, right? It just like freezes up in mid-steps, and we have a full developed brain. How much more a child not with a fully developed brain, and how much more challenging it is for a child who has lagging issues. So no matter how we as adults try to insist, to berate, even to reason, try to reward or even punish or whatever, it's like likened to that, with the pedal and like cranking up the ignition, but the engine is going into a meltdown and has too much heat to even start up. So to our child, he won't be able to really start thinking clearly again until someone helps him cool down. Or maybe he just needs a little time on his own to cool down on himself and for himself. So beautifully written here. He says, quote, "In a perfect world, when frustrated, the child would respond with something like this. You see, Mom and Dad, I have a little problem. You guys and a lot of other people are constantly asking me to shift from agenda A to agenda B, and I'm not really good at that. In fact, when you ask me to do that, I get frustrated. I have trouble thinking clearly, and then I get even more frustrated. And then I just get to a place where I just can't multitask all these different tasks at hand. And as a child gets more and more frustrated, the more easy it is for them to explode, to melt down, to have, an outburst. And then after all that, it's very hard then for the child to regain their coherence. So what we as parents can do is you think about the specific situations that usually trigger these types of outbursts. Some common possible factors that could trigger within a child an inability to cope is simply they're very hungry. You know how you feel on Yom Kippur? Well, they might be feeling that. They're all day in school. Maybe all their kids ate their snacks, in the class. Maybe they didn't like their lunch. And maybe even the night before, they fell asleep before eating and were rushed in the morning to get to the bus. Who knows how hungry they are? How about simply being very tired? Again, try to think about how you have those moments where you're so exhausted you can't even barely lift one shopping bag. And you're just like, oh, can't wait to get to bed. Good night's sleep will help me. I'll get back to myself. We can make the correlation. They can't sometimes simply put the two together. We can articulate it to our husband. Boy, did we have a sleepless night, and I forgot my lunch, and you see I'm a bit, overwhelmed right now. Let me just eat, and then we'll do the bills later tonight. They can be demanded at will to go do something, and they won't be able to articulate. I just can't right now. And even if they articulate it in some way, the parents sometimes see it as, defiant or unmotivated or lazy, God forbid. And yet it really can be something even more than being hungry or being tired. So we see another aspect to helping the child is to make a more user-friendly environment. Sometimes we as parents have to look at the list of what are our demands on the child and prioritize, making some issues more on the bottom of the list and not something at this stage in the life should be dealt with or demanded of. And at the same time, when we develop this user-friendly environment, we can be more equipped to read the warning signals and take quick action when these signals are present. For instance, when my child is very, very hungry, I can see that he's walking very, you could see that he's walking with little energy. His eyes are a bit, droopy. Or some children, they start to get antsy and hyper, and, each child is different. So that when we see these signals more, right clearly in our face, then that will not be the time to discuss an issue that could be discussed later, after the child ate or after they took a nap. And I always go back to the same thing. If you had one of those days and you just needed that little space to drink your tea and be able to read that Tehillim or just have that moment to recuperate from all the hustle and bustle, and you weren't in the mood for your husband to come in and deal with all the bills at that moment, how much more so a child? We have to really put ourselves in their shoes. And what we don't like being done to us, we can understand and preempt the situation so it wouldn't go from a very warm and friendly environment and escalating to just a very toxic demanding and with a lot of negative energy because of the frustration level that the child is experiencing because he's just not capable at that period of time. So we have to be aware and pay attention to these signals. And when they're present, try to find a different time that will be way more productive in dealing with the situation at hand. We know that unconditional love is definitely a wonderful way to start in trying to build a user-friendly environment, because it really does go a long way. Unconditional love is loving the child as is, even and especially when he's least lovable, because that is when they are most vulnerable and really need the most our love. And I definitely, highly recommend fake it till you make it. As we know, habit becomes second nature to us, as the Gemara teaches us. And really that second nature is really our true godly self. So even if a parent feels so overwhelmed and even disgusted, like with the temperament of this child, she's looking at the neighbor's child, oh, so dainty, so sweet, so easygoing. And she's looking at hers and just like, ah. And she just doesn't feel that love. She has to habituate with these even insincere gestures, because these insincere gestures will inevitably lead to sincere gestures of love. Hugging them, saying, I love you. This cannot be overexpressed. So you see how many situations we can catch the opportunity, even in the midst of an ugly situation, to be their cheerleader, to be on their side, to be like a team member with them, rooting them, saying, you can do it. I love you. Even in the midst of a moment of the greatest challenge that a child could have. But with you there, loving them, it takes the sting out of their failing moments. Another way to create a very user-friendly environment in your home is to smile. As they say, it's better to show your white teeth than all the milk in the world to nourish them. As I always say, keep shining by smiling. May God be with us all, and may we continue to shine as we try our best to smile through it all.